With you this morning, go ahead and turn to Luke chapter 14. If you don't have it with you, you can grab one of the pew Bibles and turn to page 848. As we've been talking about this morning, Jesus' intent was for all the world to hear the gospel and to be able to choose to follow him. And the way he intended that was for all of his followers, people like me, people like you, to go and be a living example of his reality and the difference that he makes in life, and to be willing to act boldly to share his truth with people who need it. Not necessarily those who want it, but people who need it. And so that's an important command that we see, and yes, missions is one way that we do that, but the local church also bears significant responsibility in this, not only in the support of missions, but locally as well. And given that, we know, and we've learned a lot about this the last couple of years, that the church is not a building, not the way Jesus intended it, but it's the group of people. These words that Jesus gave and this mission that Jesus gave is specific to each and every one of us. And it's interesting as we look at this teaching that Jesus gave in Luke that we're about to dig into, to see how he approached this idea of making more Christ followers. Just like everything else, he did it in a strange fashion. And I don't know that this exact script would work for all of us, but as we're going to look at today, we're going to look at his caution of being a disciple, and also then the focus that he would have, that he desires us to have as a church, as his followers. So if you're at Luke 14, we're going to look at that section beginning with verse 25. I'm not going to read it to you, but we're going to talk about it a little bit. Jesus, at this point, is a fair ways along in his ministry, and he's well known throughout the land, and he's developed a degree of popularity as he's doing amazing things and kind of teaching this new way of following God that is amazing and not cumbersome, that is loving and yes, challenging as well. And so we get to this point that in verse 25 we see large crowds were traveling with Jesus. Large crowds of people were following Jesus. Remember, Christian means Christ follower. So these were people who were literally saying by their actions, I'm a Christian, I'm a Christ follower. But Jesus knew better. And he turns to them and he said, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, his wife and children, his brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. That's encouraging. Remember I said that he does this in a strange way. This whole section that Luke has documented for us is basically Jesus trying to talk people out of being Christians. Doesn't seem like a good way to carry on a movement, does it? But he knew the danger of people running around claiming they were Christian, but not really truly being Christian. And so as he explains in just a few verses after what I just read, he says, hey, anytime you approach this significant undertaking, you know the cost before you begin the work. He says, if you go to build a tower, you understand the cost so that you don't get partway through and have to stop. And so what he's saying to those people following him, those large crowds following him, and to large crowds of people today in a nation that says that 80% of the people are Christian, but certainly lives more like 8% are. What he is saying is, hey, if you are really going to follow me, if you are really going to be a Christian, it is going to cost you. You better understand the cost, because it's going to cost you relationships with the people you love the most, your parents, your siblings, your friends. It's going to cost you so much in your life that, you know what, you're going to get to the point where you might even hate your own life. Serious words from Jesus. It is going to cost you everything to be a Christian. So much so that we see in what we know as verse 33 of Luke 14. Jesus says, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be my disciple. Let's translate disciple into today's language. Disciple equals Christian. Disciple at this time meant Christ follower. Christian today means Christ follower. It's the same thing. So what Jesus is saying, and if you have a red letter Bible, or pew Bibles aren't red letter, but if you have a red letter Bible, you know red letters means these are the words that literally came out of Jesus' mouth. What Jesus is saying is, any of you who does not give up everything he has cannot be a Christian. Does that mean to be a Christian you got to go home and get rid of everything that you own and live on the streets? No, unless he tells you to. But what it does mean is that in 2014, as we live a Christian, the way Jesus taught us, the way Jesus said being a Christian looked like, what it does mean is we understand that our stuff is not our own. It means we understand that our money is not our own. It means we understand that our time is not our own. It means that if God tells you, stirs in your heart this idea of doing something significant, something radical, you better consider it and not ignore it as indigestion or something like that. What it does mean is that, well, yes, you may have what we would call a secular job, a normal job. It means that you're also obedient to him in that time frame, in the context of your work. While you're going about your daily work, if you encounter somebody who, you can kind of sense that, oh, wow, maybe they need some encouragement, you take time to give them that encouragement. Or if you sense that, hey, whether they realize it or not, maybe they need prayer, I better go talk to them and offer to pray with them, you better do it. What it means is, as you're talking with somebody, if you sense that maybe they would benefit from following Jesus, you talk about the difference that following Jesus has made in your own life, and you encourage them to do the same, and you explain to them how to do the same, you introduce his word to them, and you begin to walk with them as they become Christ followers. Yesterday I was in one of the classes required from the church that I have to take with Don Davison, and one of my fellow students is a guy that is working on becoming a pastor, and he's a school teacher. Well, this is the time of year the school teachers get pretty excited because it's about over with. In his school district, he lives by Lapeer, and in his school district, they are done. They were released from school 1 week from Wednesday. He's excited about that. But he also shared that I think he has about 10 days time to get ready because he's going on a missions trip to Haiti. And not just an ordinary missions trip. He's going to be down there for most of the summer. Teacher's time off. He's giving to God. And he's going down there and he's leading this group that is going to be training 450 teachers in Haiti. That's a guy that understands that his time, his job, his money is not his own. Yes, he's still a teacher. Yes, that still provides income for him to live. But he understands that that's not his own. So during his time off, rather than being out on a boat or in an RV somewhere or out on the golf course or out in the garden or all the things that people like to do in the summer, He's serving God in a profound way, and he's excited about it. He's not like, oh man, this is what I got to do. He is excited that he has summers off so he can do this sort of thing. For several years now, as my wife has worked in home health and home hospice, I've heard her share, I'm going to embarrass her a little bit, but I've heard her share of her different encounters, different visits with people, and in just about every household, just about every visit, there are conversations related to God and faith in homes that yes, maybe Christ followers, maybe church attenders, but also in homes that are not. And I know that, and I know this to be fact, I know that there are times when she doesn't get paid for the time that she spends in that conversation either. But that's okay. Because Jesus said, go and make disciples. Jesus said, hey, this job, this time, this money, all these resources, they're not yours. Any of you who does not give up everything cannot be a Christian. Words are still true today. So, of course, the people that are hearing this are going, what in the world? This is just crazy. This makes no sense at all. Right? And Jesus began to explain. And he explained in what we know as parables. There are 3 parables that we're going to look at in Luke chapter 15. Parables are stories that he told to make a point, to teach a lesson. So what we have documented for us in Luke 15, the first parable, Jesus says, hey, I want you to think for a moment, if you have 100 sheep and you're out tending your flock in the fields, and you're kind of doing head count, you get to 99 and you notice that one's missing. What are you going to do? You going to throw your hands up in the air and say, okay, whatever, I guess it's 99 sheep now? No. Jesus says, and he knows people so well, he says, you're going to look for it. You're going to hunt that lost sheep down until you find it. And then when you find it, you're going to bring it back home, and you're going to call your friends and your neighbors and say, hey, I found my sheep. Rejoice with me. Let's have a party. Because it's a big deal. And Jesus says, in that same way, there will be more rejoicing in heaven over one sinner who repents than over 99 righteous people who do not need to repent. Now, you and I think, all know that everyone has sinned. Everyone needs to repent. So what's he talking about, these 99 people who do not need to repent? Well, he's talking about the religious people who are so convinced they have it right that they can ignore parts of this and don't need to follow what he says. All they need to do is come to church and maybe throw a few bucks in the offering plate, and they're good to go. People who are so arrogant that they don't think that they're doing anything wrong. That's what he's talking about, those 99 righteous people. But nonetheless, his point is, we look for and we seek the lost. And of course, he knows people are different, so maybe that message about sheep or livestock doesn't really set in with everybody. So he turns to, kind of dials it up a notch, and goes to something that hits closer to home for everyone. Money, right? And so Jesus says, suppose you have 10 silver coins and you lose one. What are you going to do? Well, in this day and age, probably nothing, because coins don't mean a whole lot to us. So I read of one pastor, Andy Stanley, well-known pastor, who kind of modernized this parable for us. And he says, suppose you open up your wallet, and you're the average American, so you have 6 credit cards in your wallet, and you notice as you're counting through that there's 5. One's missing, right? What are you going to do? No big deal? Or are you going to freak out about it? We're going to freak out about it. Because that means somebody has the opportunity to rack up debt that we're responsible for. So Somebody might have a new computer or a new TV or who knows what that we're responsible for. We're going to freak out about a lost credit card. Just like in that day and age, somebody would freak out about a lost coin. And we're going to search relentlessly for it. We're going to tear apart our car. We're going to tear apart, if you're a woman, you're going to tear apart your purse. You're going to tear apart your couch and everything else in your house until you find that credit card. And when you find it, you're going to call your friends and your neighbors who have also been helping you look for it. And you're going to rejoice. Everybody's going to be glad because this lost, valuable item has been found. I hope you're starting to see the point here. Animals, money, plastic, right? So the third parable goes to the item of ultimate value in God's economy. People. And this is the story that we kind of grow up knowing as the story of the prodigal son. What this story is about, Jesus says, hey, there was a guy who had two sons, and this guy was pretty wealthy. And the younger son, goes up to his dad one day and says, well, Dad, not to be rude or anything, but, I'd really kind of like to have my inheritance now. Well, kid, that's rude, but that's beside the point. And so Dad gives him his inheritance, gives him his share of the property. And the kid goes out and lives life and, parties and whatever, has a good time, lives it up big for a while. Until it's all gone. And once the money was all gone, the entire nation went into a famine. Today's terms, there was a recession or depression, right? So he was broke. He was in absolute need. So he went to work for a farmer just so he could eat what was left over from the pigs. Leftover pig slop. Just so he would have something to eat. If you know anything about Jewish culture, you know how rock bottom this is. As pigs were considered filthy and unfit to even eat, let alone touch them or share their food or eat their leftovers. This is as rock bottom as it gets. This is a notch or two below living on the streets and picking food out of the trash can. And the kid starts to think. What Jesus said as he told the story was when he came to his senses, he starts to think, even my dad's hired men have food to eat. Even my dad's hired men have a warm place to live and a dry place to lay their head down at night. Maybe, just maybe, if I go back, I won't claim to be a son, but I'll just ask my dad if he'll hire me, and maybe, just maybe, he'll hire me. So that I can have those basic needs met. And so as Jesus told the story, this son, this runaway son, this younger son, starts to return home. And while he was a long way off, Jesus said, Dad saw him because Dad was watching for him. And Dad runs out to greet him. And, he doesn't stop 10 feet short and say, well, okay, you're dirty and you stink. What does he do? He throws his arms around him and gives him a kiss. Why? Because he valued that lost son. And so as his filthy, pig slop eating son is standing there before him, Dad is so joyous over the return of what was lost. But he says to his servants, hey, go get the fattened calf, call the DJ, we're going to have a party. And so the party starts, immediately. The calf goes on the grill, the tent's up, the sound system's up, music's cranking. Everybody's having a good time. But the older brother's still out in the field working. And it comes time for him to kind of come home for dinner. And he's walking in. As he gets closer to the house, he hears this party going on. He's like, what in the world is going on here? And as he gets closer yet, he encounters one of Dad's servants. And he says to the servant, he says, What's going on? And the servant says, "Oh, you haven't heard? Well, your younger brother's home. And we're having a party to celebrate." And Jesus said in verse 28, "The older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father came out and pleaded with him, but he answered his father, 'Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. But you didn't throw a party for me. But when this son of yours,'" look, he's no longer identifying him as an equal. "When this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him." The older brother all of a sudden thinks that he should be valued more than the younger one who left. The older brother says, "Dad, I worked hard, and he kind of blew your money, and I got your partying for him. That's not right." "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So in these stories, we begin to get a sense of the passion, the heart that Jesus has for the lost. And that's the heart and passion that he desires us to have, and knows that if we're truly his followers, we will have for the lost. Pursue the lost at any cost. No matter the expense, financially or time-wise, pursue the lost, pursue the lost, pursue the lost. And when they come home, rejoice. Rejoice. When somebody comes to faith in God, rejoice. How many of you have been to a baptismal service where the baptism's done and everybody just kind of sits there quietly? Right? Probably most of us. Our family had the pleasure for a few years of attending a church that understood this. It was a big church, but it was in the city, so that kind of makes sense, right? But they understood this truth. When somebody was baptized, when somebody came home to God and made that commitment and profession of following Christ, everybody was on their feet, people were clapping and yelling and hooting and hollering, and there was air horns going off and the whole deal. We were rejoicing, just like the angels in heaven. We need to ask ourselves, who are we like? Are we keeping watch for the lost? Or are we like the older brother who gets upset when time and energy and money is spent for pursuing them? Are we upset when people rejoice over the lost coming home? Who are we like? You know, as we hear this story, too often we think about, oh, well, Jesus loves the lost, and, I was lost like that and came home, and so I kind of identify with that younger son, the prodigal son, as we call him. But we don't often think about the attitude of the older brother. And it's an important one as we understand and think about Jesus' commanded intent for the church, that we understand this as well. See, what we learn from that older brother is, you can be in the Father's house, but not have the Father's heart. Let me say that again. You can be in the Father's house, right? We call the church the Lord's house. You can be here, but not have the Father's heart for the lost. And what happens? You get angry. What happens? Godly leadership rebukes you. Says, hey, you got a bad attitude. That's a problem. Fix it. We see this manifested in churches in our community and across our country. And you can tell, all you have to do is look at their budget and see where their focus is. Are we more concerned about the physical building, or are we more concerned about building the church, the people, reaching the lost? Do we get upset over silly things? Or do we get upset because there hasn't been a baptism of an adult in years? Not comfortable stuff to hear. Not comfortable stuff to wrestle with. But necessary stuff if you understand that Jesus is indeed Lord and Jesus is indeed the head of the church and this church. I mentioned a little bit ago that I borrowed the modern analogy, or the modern telling of that parable of the lost coins from Andy Stanley. He was the one that wrote of, comparing it to credit cards in this day and age. And how we will stop at no end to find a lost credit card. What he also wrote was a condition upon using that I happen to agree with wholeheartedly. And I am looking at each and every one of you and telling you, as honestly and sincerely as possible, that his words that I share with you are words coming from my heart as well. As long as I am pastor here, starting now, every dollar we spend, every minute we spend, will be focused on finding the lost. Because Jesus commanded it. And I'm not going to oversee a church that is focused on anything else. It's that serious. It's eternity for me, it's eternity for you, and it's an eternity for the lost that are out there. It's a big deal.
Happy birthday.
Any of you who does not give up everything cannot be my disciple, cannot be a Christian. So as we kind of wrap up, we're going to transition over to communion and, shortly after that, depart our time together this morning. As I wrap up, I would encourage you to consider, who are you most like in the story of the prodigal son? Are you most like that older brother that gets angry and jealous and doesn't have God's heart? Or do you have the Father's heart and a care and a compassion for the lost and a desire to reach the lost? Who are you most like? That's the question that gets answered. Maybe not in a positive way by your words. You might not say, oh, I'm most like this one. But it gets answered by your actions from this moment forward. So I'd encourage you to consider that really for the rest of your life. Who are you most like?